MD Geist is a rather infamous two-episode OVA, the first episode being made in 1986 and the second episode being made a full 10 years later due to some bloke at Central Park Media Licensing Company being apparently rather infatuated with his dreck and providing funding. It's about a genetically engineered soldier called Geist who is very dangerous. Some might even call him the most dangerous soldier. Ingenious weaponry abbreviations aside, that was honestly about the extent of the story I understood. That is, apart from the very important point that Geist is not a very nice guy. A more appropriate name for him would be Massive Dick Geist, because that's basically what the big plot twist of the anime hinges on. There's also some other plot going on about a resistance force fighting against something or other. It was never particularly well explained. In fact, nothing in Geist really makes much sense, as mainly down to directorial incompetence. The story jumps from one scene to another with such glaring inability to create a flow that I often found myself wondering whether the video I was watching was missing an entire 10 minutes of footage. Geist would be chatting away to some woman. Wait, no, I take that back. Geist doesn't really talk. He's far too cool for that. He says about a grand total of 6 lines in the first episode and has no more than 2 lines of dialogue in the second. I know this because Norio Wakamoto voiced Geist in the first one, yet it took me almost 20 minutes into the second episode before I realised they'd changed his voice actor. But anyway, Geist would be sitting there, quite pointedly not talking as other people bitch at him, until suddenly the resistance force were ambushing a convoy. Why they were ambushing a convoy, I never understood. But MD Geist seemed to think it was important to show this to us. You know what else MD Geist seemed to think was incredibly important that we see? Guts. Blood and guts and more guts and killing and skulls being turned inside out and more guts and even more blood and even more guts. The humans in MD Geist seem to be comprised entirely of guts. If someone gets shot in the foot, guts come out. This is more obvious in the second episode than the first, where these robot bug things exist solely for the purpose of ripping people's faces off to reveal even more guts to our gleeful audience. The first episode was rather less enamoured with innards, but it did seem to think we cared about the characters who had their bodies recently vacated of said guts. There's a particularly hilarious moment where the group leader rattles through the names of the recently departed and gutless with such sincerity, yet I'd swear we'd only heard the names of 2 out of 5 of these characters before in the episode, and one of those was Bobby, who hardly counted. The single other time we'd heard Bobby's name was when he suffered from an acute sense of "oh shit, I'm in an early 90s OVA time to explode" syndrome, and his friend shouted "Bobby!" in the most unintentionally hilarious dramatic fashion. This being an early 90s OVA and all, there is the obligatory boob shot, as was required by law at the time. This particular pair of chesticles were attached to one of the most baffling female characters I've ever witnessed. She'd interject into conversations people are having with Geist. Very one-sided conversations, it must be said, this being Geist, seemingly extremely angry at something, yet I never quite understood why. She instantly falls for Geist too, for no real reason either, beyond possibly to give an excuse for her to take off her clothes and get that obligatory boob shot out of the way. I should probably praise MD Geist for at least trying to justify the boob shot, which is something an awful lot of other 80s and 90s OVAs never bothered doing. Although, that's the highest praise I can give an anime, something clearly isn't right. Actually, there is something I can praise. Geist's characterization. That is probably the only thing that remains consistent throughout the 2 episodes. Well, that and the fascination with guts. Once you understand that the entire point of this show is that Geist is a massive dick, that pretty much explains everything that happens. People try to kill Geist. Why? Because he's a massive dick. Geist, spoiler, destroys humanity. Why? Because he's a massive dick. The end of the first episode shows Geist arriving at the place with the killer robots that they're meant to destroy. But, being the massive dick that he is, Geist instead activates them and goes and destroys humanity. Why does he do this? It doesn't make any sense in relation to anything else that happened in the plot, especially since Geist has absolutely no ulterior motives. He's simply being a massive dick, and I sort of respect the show for being so blunt about that. I could also praise MD Geist for the second episode being marginally better than the first, but I won't, because they're both dreadful. The animation is laughable, occasionally lapses into derp quality where suddenly everyone looks blurred. The plot is nonsensical, and any attempts at characterization beyond Geist himself is awful. That all said, I don't think it's that deserving of his infamously Terribad label. It's a bad anime, but I have seen much worse.